Welcome, everyone, to Who Needs a Film Critic? I'm your host, William Yelton, and today we will be celebrating the Halloween spirit by talking about the 1996 horror movie classic, Scream. All right. Before we begin, let me just say it goes without saying that it was not easy to find people who have never seen Scream. And I'm excited to hear your raw reactions after seeing it for the first time. Some of you on the panel might have loved what you've seen, while others might have hated, and that's okay. As with any discussion on this channel, all viewpoints are respected, but debate is encouraged. This panel comes from all different backgrounds, professions, ages, ethnicities, and geographic locations, and each person, I'm sure, will be bringing their own unique perspective to the conversation. At the end of the panel, everyone will send me their review of the movie 1 to 5, and I will tally up the rankings and give this film the average score provided by you, the panel. All right, let's jump right into the conversation about Scream. If there's one scene that people remember from this cult classic, it is the first 10-minute sequence. Immediately, it becomes clear that this movie is not your typical horror movie. Let's take a look back at the clip and discuss.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
What did you say?
I want to know who I'm talking to.
I do have a boyfriend, and he'll be here any second, so your ass better be good.
Sure.
He's big and he plays football!
Was there anybody in this panel that was unspoiled that thought perhaps Drew Barrymore was the lead character in this movie? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm so surprised. I thought for sure the one thing people would know was that beginning. So Nicole, talk to me about what you were thinking when presumably the main character is killed off in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, I was watching that whole beginning and I'm just convinced because it looked kind of familiar. I felt like I had seen either a picture, a clip of it or something. So I was like, oh, I know this. Then I was like, oh, Drew Barrymore, she's going to be the lead. She's going to be what this is all about and she's going to survive. And so I was very thrown off as she's stabbed, whatever, all of that. And she's hung. So that really threw me off. I was confused. I just thought it was going to be everyone dying off after that.
So who else raised their hand about being surprised? All right, Kiana, talk about what was going through your head.
I mean, it's kind of obvious to have the first person you show being killed. So I was like, oh, no, it's not going to happen. I swear it's not. She's on the phone. You see the car coming and driving up and you're just run. And she stops and looks at it bitch, run to the car. And so kind of at that point, I was like, hey, she's dead. But before that, I was like, maybe she'll be smart and live. I don't know.
I might have a little bit of a bias here at the beginning, mainly because I had seen Scary Movie. So literally from the beginning of the film, I could almost say the lines just as the girl was saying them.
Hello?
Want to have a little fun?
Who is this?
Tell me your name and I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Oops. I farted. I didn't think you would hear me.
So the entire time, I just couldn't take it seriously because I knew more or less how that scene was supposed to go based on how Scary Movie was.
It made me wonder about the budget of the movie and whether or not they could afford Drew Barrymore and what was going on exactly behind the scenes there.
Scream featuring Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, exactly. Wasn't she Bill? I'm not sure, but
so a little bit behind the scenes, yes, she was actually originally auditioning for Sidney Prescott, but she read that opening scene and loved it so much that she told them, look, I just want to be killed off. And then basically they marketed the whole movie to put her on the posters to basically throw people off kilter immediately. So it was all intentional. So kind of going past our initial surprise that they killed off what we presumed to be the main character, What else about this scene stuck out to you?
Okay, this is me putting on my movie critic hat here. Boom. Is I saw two things that influenced, I thought, future horror movies. And that would be the phone from The Ring. You know, I felt like the phone ringing, like that's a big trope, I think, that goes forward. And also, do you want to play a game? You know, like Saw. I felt like there was some influence there. And then secondly, the other thing that stuck out to me was like how goofy the killer is and how he needs to like brush up on his fighting skills. Cause this is just the beginning, but he's constantly getting like his shit slammed and doors and bridges and stuff. So
you can't take him seriously. Like, I'm like, how can you just,
Why is he so bad?
Honestly, the moment that the villain, it's like being punched in the face and he's falling, like that's the moment that I just lost it at that point. I was like, okay, this is not serious.
I mean, the scariest thing at the beginning of the movie, let's be real here, was that they put Harvey Weinstein's name before they ever showed the title of the movie. And then it goes into the movie. And so right from the beginning, I was like, God, I hope my $3.99 streaming rental doesn't have any money going to him.
Harvey Weinstein, you know what I mean?
So does anybody want to play the counter argument that you were actually freaked out by the scene, or or everybody's in the same opinion?
No, I think I'm probably more of a baby than most people when it comes to scary movies. I think I've in my whole life, I've watched maybe 2 or 3. So I think like the movie in general, I probably thought it was scarier than most people. I didn't think it was like terrifying, but when it comes to like gore and like stabbings, that's not my thing. So I would probably say like this scene, I thought it was like the chasing and stuff also not for me. So I do think it was partly scary. I will say that.
All right. So while Drew Barrymore was not the main character was introduced the next scene. Her name is Sidney Prescott, and she becomes our lead protagonist. So what are your thoughts on our main character? Anybody? What is anyone's thoughts on Sidney Prescott?
She's really boring. I'm not even gonna be like, nice about it. She's very boring. She doesn't give me main character energy. There's nothing about her that made me like her. And that's just how I felt about it. I liked the best friend more than I liked her.
I kind of feel like the boring was almost part of what she was supposed to be. Like, I feel like she was supposed to kind of just be like really unremarkable, which kind of created this interesting contrast when she was so effective at beating the shit out of this like guy like twice her size trying to kill her with a knife. Because like she just seems like sort of like this quiet, almost like meek, like really shut down after her mom's death, but also just has like so much fight in her and can kick some serious ass.
She's like the village virgin. You know, she's along she's along for the ride and don't touch me. And, you know, just everything from the ponytail to the bangs to the outfitting of, you know, everything she was wearing. She was cast to be the village virgin.
Yes.
Like y'all said, she was boring, but I love the innocence in her. Like, I just thought it was just so cute. But which also made it kind of more scary to me, because I'm like, no, don't kill this baby. Like, she's innocent. But I do feel Anai. I said your name correctly.
Amai. Sorry, like Amai.
I do feel, I understand where you were coming from when you were saying the best friend was more interesting. I really did. I really did get more in touch with the best friend. I was like, why they kill her off? I was kind of hurt too.
Yeah.
But, she was a little more interesting, but I just love the innocence in Sidney. I thought it was just so sweet. I'm glad she survived.
I agree completely with Latoya that I liked the innocence that she brought to it. I just almost thought it was too innocent. I wasn't believing it.
But Kim, the counter argument is that the 90s was an innocent time.
No. Whatever. Absolutely no, it wasn't.
Who was making that argument?
I can assure you, the 70s, 80s, and 90s were not innocent at all.
I can't really think of a particularly innocent time ever in American history.
Other than the masked figure, or should we say figures, that stalk Sidney, perhaps the biggest rival in the movie is reporter Gale Weathers, played by Courtney Cox. So let's watch one scene back between the two of them and discuss their complicated relationship and find out whose side you are on. Let's take a look.
You owe me. I owe you shit. You owe my mother. Somebody was gonna write a book about it. Right. You got what you wanted. Cotton Weary's in jail. They're gonna gas him. Do you still think he's innocent? Your testimony put him away. It doesn't really matter what I think. He butchered her. Her blood was all over his coat. He was drunk that night. I saw him leave wearing it. No, you saw someone leave wearing that coat. An innocent man on death row. A killer still on the loose. If I'm right about this, I could save a man's life. Do you know what that could do for my book sales?
So thoughts on the scene, thoughts on this character, and thoughts on the two women's relationship.
What's funny about the scene is that like she's totally on the money, but for like the most selfish and greedy reasons that she possibly could be. Like she could totally save a man's life. She's totally onto what's really going on, but because it's going to benefit her. And either way, I feel like she doesn't actually give a damn about what ends up happening to Cotton. I don't know if I'm on either character's side. I'm definitely appreciative to be able to see where both of them are standing, but I don't think I can particularly agree with either of them because both of them are very caught up in like their own circumstances.
I was kind of hashtag Team Gale at that point. So here's the thing, like, yeah, like I understand where you're coming from as far as like the selfishness and stuff. And at the beginning, I thought that she was just annoying, like an annoying reporter. I'm like, I've seen plenty of those, but when she basically told that one line about like, no, you saw someone leaving with a coat, I was just like, you're right. And I don't know, at that point, she just kind of gave me like a little bit of this woman's really smart, and I kind of like her for that because she made her, Sidney, she made her doubt for the first time on really was it true, the whole thing about her mother. After that scene, I was just like, you go, girl.
Amai, what are your thoughts?
Honestly, Gail she knows how to sell it herself. Like anybody who is in any sort of like music, networking, anything, they know how to sell themselves. They know that they need to have immense, like, you know, just concrete facts. And that's the thing that kind of made me want to believe her because she has concrete facts. Like she wrote a whole book about it. Like, you know, she dedicated a lot of time to it. And in that scene, you could definitely tell that Sidney wasn't even sure. She was just so upset about her mother, and she just had so much rage, and you know, she just wanted a solution because she's a child. She just wants the solution. She doesn't care who actually did it. She just wants somebody to take blame for killing her mom.
Gale exudes big girl boss energy too, so it's really hard to not find her persuasive.
I was Team Gale, and I think that's because I'm biased towards Courtney Cox. I absolutely love her outside of the movie, so she could have been the murderer, and I would have been like, yeah, Team Gale, go. Like, get that girl, like, get your story. So yeah, like, whether she's a good person and whether she's ethical, all that stuff is kind of pushed aside to me. I just like Courtney Cox, so I was waiting for her to come up in the movie, and when she did, I was so excited.
I disagree. I couldn't stand Gale. I wanted to with Sidney. I was like, let me punch her next because she's about to get it. I was more on the sensitive side, like, girl, you talk about somebody's mama who passed. Like, really? I was ready to fight her. Like, seriously. I wrote down notes. I said Sidney was aggravating. She was a true reporter, but she could have got more hands. She should have punched her more than once.
I probably would have sympathized with that thought if I had like seen Sidney as like a lovable character, but she just seemed like a victim the entire time.
Exactly.
And like that was to an extent boring.
This baby is hurting. Like, leave her alone. I keep calling her baby. I'm like 35. She's probably, you know, but
she looked 35.
Feel like it someday. But in my eyes, I seen her as an innocent child who lost her mom, and people are picking on her. I guess because I didn't know the outcome of what happened, and learning more, then I was more on Gale's side. But in the beginning, Gale could have got more hands than what she got.
Despite how cold Gale Weathers can be, she certainly lightens up every time Deputy Dewey comes into a scene. So let's take a look at the next scene and discuss.
Gale Weathers, field correspondent, top story.
I know who you are, Miss Weathers.
You look awfully young to be a police officer.
I'm 25 years old.
In a demographic study, I proved to be most popular amongst males 11 to 24. I guess I just missed you. Looks like we've got a serial killer on our hands.
If you'll excuse me.
I'm sorry, am I keeping you?
You are much prettier in person. I'm 25. I was 24 for a whole year.
Call me Gale.
Seriously, Gale is horny. That's all there is to it. She looks like she's 10 years older than him. And it's a total cougar attack going up the steps here on David Arquette. 3 years later, they ended up married, all because of this movie. Fun fact, David Arquette right now is 50. So he was 25 when they filmed this.
That's hot.
Courtney Cox is 57. So she would have been 32. It was a cougar thing.
That's not cougar. 32 to 25.
Yeah, she was like 42 maybe.
That's like
Please, I was 20. I was 29 and married my 23-year-old husband. That was total cougar right there too.
No, I can't agree.
Might be giving yourself too much credit there.
All right.
Not really.
I thought Dewey, he was just kind of weird. Like, he was goofy. I also thought he was the killer the whole time. I don't know, certain interactions with Sidney, it wasn't like predatory, but it was just kind of weird. Like, I feel like they were trying to portray it as like protective and stuff, but there were just certain things where I was like, that's off, he's off. I didn't really vibe with him. I thought he was just kind of weird.
I thought he was very goofy and like not respected at all. Of course, his sister was very rude towards him, but it didn't seem like anyone respected him, not even his co-workers.
From the mere fact that they changed his name from Dwight to Dewey the entire time, I was like, okay, well, at least he has a motive to be mad at the world. And, you know, I was invested at that moment with him being like the killer.
Why did you think, Santi, that he was the killer?
When Sidney was at the friend's house with like, you know, like Dewey and the sister. And there was that scene when like he calls her and the mom goes and knocks on Dewey's door, and just so happens that when the phone call ends, he comes out. So it just kind of that's the moment that I started to be like, whoa, that is just too casual for it to not have been him. So,
you know, it's an interesting character in my opinion, because I do feel like it doesn't say it directly, but I do think that the character is on the spectrum somewhat of some sort of maybe learning disability or maybe autistic. Did anybody else pick up what I've seen in this character?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I'm actually a behavioral therapist, so I work with children and people on the spectrum. So it was definitely something that I did notice, how he kind of had a hard time making eye contact and like just not really being in the loop with everything else. But, you know, the spectrum is such a wide, like, demographic. So, you know, you can be a very high functioning human being and, you know, you can do anything. You know, disabilities don't hold anybody back, you know.
Also, building off what Amai said, and coming from my own professional experience as a former reporter, I hate to see it when a female reporter is portrayed as like using her sexuality to take advantage of a source. And so I think it even adds to that to think that he like is on some kind of spectrum or something. And she's like using that kind of like his loneliness as like a way to take advantage of his stuff. That just really turned me off to Gale, I thought.
Who thinks that throughout the entire film, Gale was using Dewey?
I thought so for sure.
Everybody but EJ. Okay, so that's the majority of the panel. So let's first hear from someone who's pro that she was manipulating him throughout the entire movie. We just heard Aaron's thoughts. Who else wants to take the floor?
She's already manipulated Sidney and Cotton in jail to get the story for her book. And I think that she used that aggressiveness towards this younger guy. I mean, bringing up demographics and, oh yeah, well, all the younger guys like me. What a bitch thing to do.
When you have somebody who's trying to advance their agenda in such a strong way, when you pair that with somebody who is, you know, maybe not able to stand up for themselves as much as you know, the typical person. It just creates this dynamic that's obviously not great for Dewey and really good for Gale. So that's what I got out of it.
EJ, you were the sole person on this panel that said, no, I don't think that she was manipulating him the entire time.
Okay, so let me start this off by clarifying. I don't think she was manipulating him the entire time. I think that's how things started off. I believe that she definitely saw him as an opportunity to get information that was really close to the situation since he works for the sheriff's department. And I think that's what even brought him into her conscious attention in the first place. Otherwise, she probably wouldn't have even noticed his existence. But I think later on in the movie, like when he fell on top of her, that felt like a genuine moment. Maybe I'm being optimistic. But it looks like an actual like kind of tender moment where she kind of let down the whole like I'm going to use like the honeypot routine in order to kind of like there was I don't know, I felt like there was an actual emotional connection. You guys are kind of making me question if that's true or not anymore.
Well, Nicole was nodding along with you at least at the beginning.
Oh, so. I didn't see that. Hell yeah, Nicole.
Knowing that there are more movies in this franchise, are you hoping that Dewey and Gale become a couple? Raise your hand if you hope that this couple will be in effect in future movies.
I could go either way.
Latoya and Zach. So we got two people. So Latoya, and Kiana. Yeah. Latoya, are you just a hopeless romantic?
Yes, like why not? He seems like a goofy, sweet guy. Why can't he get the girl? I think he deserves it.
No, I just say he deserves a better girl than Gale, but you know, I mean, I was invested for a little bit on like the whole little romantic thing they were trying to do between them. But it wasn't like what was pulling me into the movie. At that point, I was way too invested on the action scenes of the killers and with Sidney that, you know, their little thing between them just really wasn't like anything that I took a lot of notice on.
I agree with that.
Well, now that we've covered most of the characters in this film, let's also talk about the three boys in the core friend group. Let's take a look back at this scene in particular and discuss.
If you were the only suspect in a senseless bloodbath, would you be standing in the horror section? He's got killer printed all over his forehead. Okay, really? This is standard horror movie stuff. There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect. How do we know you're not the killer?
What would be your motive?
Good kid. Are you telling me that's not a killer?
Thoughts on this scene?
What is that actor's name? Shaggy?
Matthew Leonard.
That guy's crazy as shit. That guy's performance is so over the top.
I love that guy. I thought he was really good. He was one of my
yeah, I loved every second of watching him. It was so ridiculous the whole time. I loved it so much. In that moment, like everything sort of culminated. Like you had both of the killers on either side of this guy, like saying what the audience might have already been suspecting, which is that he would be the number one suspect. So I thought the scene was really funny. I thought it was like really necessary. Every minute of it was just like really crazy the whole time. Like I think the reason I liked Stu's performance is because I'm a big Nicolas Cage fan. And so it just felt like he was being unnecessarily intense about really casual lines of dialogue.
He is playing like a high schooler or whatever. I feel like he was very much overplaying like how obnoxious a high school boy can be. They are obnoxious, but like why is he like screaming? And I do see how it does play in him, you know, being crazy and everything, but I don't know. Like I feel like if I'm in public, like you're not gonna catch me acting like that.
Knowing that they're both the killer, like just their interactions with like the movie buff guy, like Stu, like he goes around like his like back and like touches his earlobe, and like
I'm saying
if like this like supposed killer is coming up to like somebody I'm talking to, I'm not gonna go and like hug him and try and get in on the conversation. I'm gonna like give him some space. Yeah, I'm leaving. So like I just thought it was a really weird interaction. And yeah, watching it back, A, it's over the top, and B, I think it kind of shows that they are in like cahoots. They are the killers. So
Santiago, you talked previously about your suspicion of Dewey. Was there a scene in particular that started, you know, cueing you into, hey, maybe it's other people in this movie? Or could it have been this scene?
During the entire movie, the ones I thought were actually the ones, which I find it interesting. I'm like, how was I actually tricked into it? Because for no reason did I ever think the guy that was doing the earlobe thing was the killer. Like, he just seemed too stupid to me. Like, that was just like the kind of character, like, he could have been high the entire time. I don't know. But
Yet you were talking about at the beginning of this movie how does this person that's trying to kill people keep getting beat up by doors and punches and kicks?
Which made me continue thinking that he was Dewey, because he just didn't seem like he was like a guy that had it all together. One, I stopped thinking that he was the boyfriend the moment he said something about a phone call, like, oh, like, how could it have been me if I was in jail? And I was like, oh, well, that's true. So I just kind of like wrote him off, and during the entire time of the movie, I just didn't even like try to associate him again, and especially the moment where like he supposedly gets killed at the end. And then the only time that I ever thought he was the crazy guy with the earlobe, and it was at the end when, you know, he said like, oh, I'll be right back. And then he never comes back, and all these murders are happening. And I was like, okay, so that was him. But it was until the very end. The entire time, those are the ones that I never suspected of.
I think the people that created this movie did a good job of making us as the viewers think that it wouldn't be this guy. Like, I remember in the scene when they were sitting, like a whole bunch of them were sitting at that water fountain. Like, they literally talked about that guy. They're like, oh, well, why aren't you? Why couldn't you be the killer? You know? And it seemed like all the people that we thought would be the killer, at some point in the movie, they talk about how they are the killer. And so it was interesting that they had already talked about him being the killer, and sure enough, he ends up being the killer. So it's almost like they did that to make us think that it wasn't going to be him. And then, of course, it ends up, you know, being him, or, you know, he was one of them.
Thank you, Zach, for teeing us up for our last scene of the evening, where it is revealed once and for all that there isn't just one killer, there's two.
Surprise, Sidney. What's the matter, Sidney? You look like you've seen a ghost.
Your slut mother was fucking my father, and she's the reason my mom moved out and abandoned me. How's that for a motive?
I'm ready, baby! Everybody dies, but us, we're gonna carry on and plan the sequel, because let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
All right, thoughts on the big reveal?
I was not expecting them to be the killers.
And think it was both of them, to be honest. I thought it was just the boyfriend at first. I didn't see the friend actually being the killer. Although he had the tendencies of the goofiness and getting hurt, and I think that was his, whenever he was getting hurt, I really think it was Stu. It was him. Every time that he got beat up, that was definitely him. But I still did two people. I thought it was just, you know, the boyfriend at first. And then to find out it was both of them together in on it, I was like, oh, okay. That made it more, you know, more interesting.
Who was surprised that there were two killers as opposed to one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 people? Okay.
I don't think people have superhuman abilities in movies unless stated otherwise. So therefore, if the killer is around when one person isn't around, automatically you think, okay, that person is the killer. But then the killer's there with that same suspect. It's like, so it must be another person. So right off the bat, I thought, okay, this is a 2-man team right now. Like, that was my first thinking process. And then I immediately thought it was a boyfriend just because he acts mentally deranged. There's no high school boy who like creeps around like that. And just, you know, me knowing like psychology and mental health, like I can tell when I'm like, okay, you're uneasy. Same thing with the friend. He was acting kind of on the same level as the boyfriend, but at a more, you know, loud, obnoxious level. So I'm looking at them as a therapist would look at someone and be kind of like, okay, something's not clicking in y'all's brains, like something's a little off. So that I just knew it was mostly them because, you know, a normal person can't really go through with, killing people.
I think Amaya's right on with them being so mentally deranged and just so off. And they were just so weird. But that's the entire reason why I thought it wasn't them the whole time. Because I'm very like into true crime and like I watch everything, like try and figure out who it is all the time. And it never feels like it's the obvious person. So when I'm watching it, and again, like in the beginning, they even talk about like them being the killer and then the boyfriend, he's like caught with the phone and things like that. I'm like, that's so obvious. It's not going to be them, but obviously it is. So that's like what kind of threw me off, was it being so obvious on them being like so odd.
You've got Sidney being the doe-eyed, wide-eyed, innocent victim of everything. But Billy, if you notice, he squints all the time, all the way through the movie. Like anytime he's looking at you, he's giving you the side eye and he's squinting. And the other killer was almost like the comedic relief to take the attention off of Billy, like the class clown. So he's always drawing the attention on himself, which takes it off of Billy, who's the, and I use the term very loosely, the mastermind of this year-long planning of the 1-year anniversary that her mother was killed. We're going to go in and kill every high school kid we know.
So they killed her mom.
Exactly.
They killed her mom.
Yeah.
That's who killed her mom too. And then he dated her for like a whole year.
Yeah.
Which means,
talk about
which
the long
means
game.
they also raped her mother.
Yeah.
My
Because
God.
that was the whole premise of Cotton being in jail, was for the rape and murder of her mother. Basically, Billy said everything except your mom was a whore and I slept with her and now I got you too. You know, they just didn't put that dialogue in there. But 1 year later, from the time that he raped or slept with her mother, he slept with her. And so the bookend of that is creepy.
Talk about the long game. Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
Well, the real villain of this movie was Billy's dad for cheating on the mom and creating this whole trauma for the kids. So that was the real villain.
Take your kids to therapy. This is literally what will happen. Like, you need to talk to your children and communicate with them. And it's just like, and it really like pours into like the toxic masculinity of like the 90s, where he's just like, I took your virginity. And like,
Yeah, it is a very 90s.
okay.
All right, before we get to the reviews, I'd like to just zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. This year marks the 25th anniversary of this film, and yet audiences still flock to see this movie. I mean, just from my own personal experience, just the other weekend, they were showing it at a theater down the street, and I tried to get tickets, but it was completely sold out. And this is 25 years later after the movie was first released. So my question is, why do you think audiences all these years later are still drawn to this movie? Any thoughts?
I think why it's still such a popular movie is it combines a lot of like the classic cheesy horror movie tropes that we see, and like actually like makes fun of it, like almost breaks the third wall to point them out. And then on the flip side, it also has this kind of like whodunit, like it always keeps you guessing on your toes. Like throughout the whole movie, I was like, oh, it's the boyfriend, it's the principal, it's this person, it's that person. Oh, maybe it's the boyfriend. Oh no, it's whoever. And so it really blends those two aspects. And that's why I think it's still such a cult classic, is because it makes you laugh, but it also makes you kind of like shudder a little bit. And like, you don't really want to be in that situation, but you love watching it.
Building off what you just said, I think that, yeah, there's a nostalgia factor for a bunch of like loser millennials who like can't like get over the past, as well as the fact that I really sense that this was like Scary Movie Zero, you know, like I had no idea that it was about to be like kind of almost a parody, because I don't know about the history of you know, breaking the fourth wall, but like, so back in 1996, is that like a very unusual thing to happen in a horror movie or something?
This
like
is considered to be the first horror movie that knew about horror movies.
Okay, because now it's like kind of old news, but back then maybe I would have been like, boom.
Another thing like that was when who is it, Sydney, when she was on the phone and she was saying how, oh, is this when, you know, the character runs upstairs when we all know she should be running out the front door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she
then
tries
does
to
that.
do that, and she can't. And then she ends up, exactly. And then she ends up actually running up the stairs, doing exactly what she had said. You're the first scary movie to like reference other scary movies, and so, not that it's necessarily making a statement by any means, but it's just different. So it's open to, you know, so much more criticism than a typical scary movie would be, that just like follows the script and is very, very predictable.
Even like it makes me think, like, literally in the scene where Jamie Kennedy is on the couch watching Halloween, and he's yelling, "Jamie, look behind you, Jamie, look behind you." Like, it's his own name, man, and the guy's like, the killer is behind him.
I know that a lot of people enjoy the fact that it was very self-aware and breaks the fourth wall, but like it just turned me off to the entire movie, especially when the girl was like, the best friend was in the garage and she was like, "Oh, please, Mr. Killerface, I want to be in the sequel." Like,
Oh, I love that part.
very much. I mean, she was cute. I was like, oh, that was cute. But like, still, I was like, okay, well, you're going to die. And she did. So it was like.
I will say the garage door death was like the only shocking, like true scary movie.
How did the writers think that could actually happen?
It would
I
just
wouldn't
go
see her
back
head come
down
off,
once it
though.
sensed her body.
The motor
there's
isn't
no way
strong enough to lift a whole
to lift
even
up a whole
up
girl.
and to
Thank
kill
you.
them.
I have broken garage doors just by opening them, like, on a good day, nothing around them.
Wait.
Like,
All
there's
the
no
way up, baby.
Awesome job, guys. This has been a great discussion. The only thing left to do is to review. Each of you has sent me your ratings for this movie, 1 to 5. 1 being you hated it, and 5 being you absolutely loved it. I have averaged all the numbers together, and it is time for me to reveal the results. Tonight, this panel has rated Scream a 3.1.
I want to know, I gave it a 1. Who gave it a high number to average it out?
I gave it a 3.
Give it a 4.
I give it a 3. I appreciate the influence it probably had on later movies, you know?
It was hard to watch for me. Like, it really was.
And with y'all being so young, I'm going, but wait, Carrie was before that, and Carrie was scary.
I really enjoyed it.
Wow.
Like, I felt nostalgic to the 90s. I was born in the 90s, so I can say that. I knew it was going to be kind of funny, so I kind of took that into it with like a grain of salt. And I don't know, just from start to finish, I just enjoyed watching it, you know?
I don't like movies in general, and I feel like this was one that like I actually was like entertained. I don't know. I don't think like necessarily kind of what Kiana was saying about it being like super scary or anything like that. I wasn't, again, like terrified or like on the edge of my seat, but just like following along and stuff. I liked most of the characters, even though some of the acting was kind of, again, dramatic. It was a lot. I liked the movie, and everything about it was good for me.
All right, that concludes today's discussion on Scream. Tune in next time to see what a new panel thinks about HBO's The White Lotus. That's right, a new group of strangers will discuss their raw reactions after watching the premiere episode of the summer sensation for the first time. And if you're looking for new content, check out our panels discussing all 9 episodes of Squid Game. I would like to thank the panelists for giving me their time tonight, and to the viewers at home listening in. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, please. It's super important. We're also on the podcast app, so type "Who Needs a Film Critic" to get all the episodes downloaded straight to your phone. Finally, if you wish to join a future panel talking about another movie or television show, email me at whoneedsafilmcritic@gmail.com. Until then, I'm your host, William Yelton, and that is all for now. Good night, everyone.